Well, everybody, it's the 21st of October 2020. And just a very brief comment here. But Air New Zealand got a so-called bubble between Australia and New Zealand, but it's only a one-way bubble now, worked that out. People coming from New Zealand to Australia can step off the plane and go wherever they like. Now, a strange thing has happened. Many of the passengers, in other words, have flown down to Melbourne. They've arrived in Sydney. They've flown to Melbourne. The borders are closed between Victoria and New South Wales. So how are there any commercial flights in any case, basically, between the two? Although I can imagine a couple of limited flights with people who've got permission to fly. And they've gone to South Australia, which they're allowed to do. Then they've gone to Western Australia, which has a hard border, as they call it. So how did they get permission to fly into Western Australia? And apparently on the news it says that they can. Well, wait a minute. We can't go to Victoria. Well, I'm in Queensland. We can't do that. And we got a booking in January of next year from Sydney to Brisbane, and the borders are still closed, but I expect the borders to be open in November or December at the latest, in other words, before Christmas. But it just seems to me to be a bizarre situation, and I'm going to make a prediction here, going out on a limb on this one, but I believe what will happen is, if and when they invent this, develop this vaccination for COVID-19, what's the bet that they won't ask everybody who's flying overseas to be vaccinated first, and those that are coming into Australia to be vaccinated before they arrive? And I hope they wouldn't go as far as saying, well, if you want to travel to interstate to Victoria or somewhere, you've got to have vaccination. That's just going too far, in my opinion. But anyway, these are just a few thoughts on that, and we want the borders to be open, but it's a great mystery to me how people from New Zealand can fly to Australia and change planes and go to somewhere where they're not supposed to be there. They're supposed to have 14 days isolation before they're let out into the community. So how did they get off the plane and walk away? What is the government in Victoria going to do about that?